awesome. So you guys made it through, which is so awesome, so powerful. I congratulate you, absolutely crushing it, which is super exciting. And I know that like, I'm so excited for you, because like, this stuff we're getting into right now is just gold, which is super cool. So like, I'm so excited. We're gonna look at a sure way of making enemies and how to avoid it this chapter, which is just so key, so powerful. It's something I struggled with for so long, and so I'm so excited to share it with you. So with that said, let's jump over to the computer and let's make it happen. Okay, so you got Theodore Roosevelt, okay? He's in the White House. You know, he's literally like, you know, if you look at like where everyone is in society, right? Like he's at the top of this pyramid. I mean, he's the man, right? And as he's sitting at the top, like he's contemplating about like the world around him. And he's like, what's really, you know, going on? Not just with my life, but with everyone around me, right? Like, how am I actually doing? And he realizes that, you know, if he could be right 75% of the time, he would be really impressed with himself. It would totally blow away his expectations if he could just be correct 75% of the time, because that was like one of the highest ratings that one could really get, especially at the time, right? Like it was really tough to be right like all the time. If you can be sure of being correct only like 55% of the time, like you can, you know, make a lot of money trading stocks, you know? It's this idea, and this is like, you know, tangent, but like, you know, like you don't have to always be right, and most people aren't always right. And so you've got like a little leeway, right? And it depends on, you know, what you're doing, but like with investing, right? Like you can be right like 75% of the time, or you can be right 25% of the time and still be profitable either way, which is like, it's the same thing with reality, right? Like you don't really know like how often you're actually right. Not about like investments or stocks, but more so about like personal communications and how you're directly contacting with other people, right? Like how are you connecting with them, and are you, you know, correct with your inferences, you know, your facts, your statements, your figures? Because so often, you know, you can have a mistake, right? People are people, humans are humans, right? So yeah, they give the same example. You know, if you're right only 55% of the time, you could go to Wall Street and make $1 million a day. I don't know about that one. I mean, there's a little bit more to it. If you can't be sure of being right even 55% of the time, why should you tell other people that they are wrong? And that's really what we're gonna focus on here, is telling others that they're wrong. Which is just so harsh, because remember this idea that like you don't want criticism, you don't want negativity, you don't want like, you know, bad emotions in your life, right? And when you tell someone they're wrong, like that's harsh, you know, that hurts. And it's one of the quickest ways to just alienate others, which is just harsh. It's just a bad place to be, which is, yeah, it's bad. So here's the deal, like you can tell people they're wrong by look, right? Or you can tell them they're wrong by intonation or gesture, just as eloquently as you can in words. Gesture. So like, it doesn't have to be direct. You don't have to directly tell someone you're wrong. It's all about the underlying psychology. It's about what you think. It's about how you actually see that person, how you actually feel about them, which is really powerful. And so what he writes here is so huge. He says, never should you make others feel like they're wrong. Because if you tell them you're wrong, you make them disagree with you, which is a bad thing to do. Because if people disagree with you, what's that do, right? It draws, you know, a line between you and someone else, and it just crushes your ability to make a connection through that wall. It's very tough to actually push through and have that quality relationship. And that's kind of exactly what he talks about here, and what he focuses on here, because it's so important. Because it will destroy intelligence, it will destroy judgment, it will destroy pride, and it will crush self-respect. Because what you're doing is you're putting up a wall of criticism that's totally separating you and the other person, and thereby eradicating any chances you could even hope to have of having quality connection with them, or really getting that same intimate, deep level with the work you're doing and the efforts that you have, right? And so you've got to make sure to give respect, right? And understand that it never makes others want to change their minds when you yell at them or argue with them or try to reason with them, or tell them, like if you tell them they're wrong, like they're not going to want to change their mind, right? People want to stick with their gut. They want to stick with themselves, and they want to be themselves. And so you've got to focus instead on just not really trying to like, he uses a really great phrase here, and I love it. He says, you may then hurl at them all the knowledge of Plato or an Immanuel Kant, but you will not alter their opinion if you hurt their feelings. right? Because remember, people get defensive if you attack them. It's the same thing if you like push at them and hurt their feelings. Like, that's not gonna have a lasting impact, a lasting change. You can't force, right, all of this. You can't force people to come over to your point of view. Like, you can't force them into your perspective. And if you try to do that, it's just gonna make them rigid. It's gonna make them stiff. If you try to look at like any kind of animal, like if you want an animal to go somewhere, you can't just like push the donkey there. You gotta like hang the carrot in front of his face with a stick or something. Like, you've got to be gentle. You got to be careful, considerate, and look at the other point of view instead of just forcing negativity, forcing defeat on other people. Because other people, like, even if you're explaining something really, really, really well, and this is something I struggle with a whole lot. Like, when I'm trying to explain to people, like, please don't put your whole portfolio in one stock. Like, you can't do it in a negative way, or else it just won't have a lasting impact. And it's like same thing here, right? You have to make sure that you start by like you can't just say, I'm going to prove you wrong, or I'm going to prove something else to you. Like, that's awful. And he says it here, and it's just so bad. And it's basically saying, like, I'm smarter than you, and I'm going to tell you a thing or two to make you change your mind, right? Change your mind. And like, what do you think this makes the other person feel? Like, it's gonna make them feel like crap, right? They just they don't care, right? People care about themselves, and that's the challenge, right? And that's the challenge, right? And that's exactly what he says here. Is like, you've got to look at this objection. You have to look at this barrier you have to overcome, not as like a problem, but as a challenge. So huge. And it arouses opposition and makes the listener want to battle with you before you even start. It's like you're basically looking at this huge hill, and you've kind of got like a couple of options on how to overcome this hill. And the first option is the easy option. You get in a helicopter with your buddy, and you fly up to the top of the hill, and you take the slow, considerate way, and you ask them how they feel, and ask them to sort of explain themselves, and just listen and care and be intimate. Not like force things onto them, but instead look at different perspectives and try to understand, like, what's the real truth. And then there's the difficult way, which is trying to walk up Mount Everest, try to get to like base camps, 6, and you keep pushing and pushing, and it's so difficult, so much resistance through the process, because you're trying to force it on, right? Helicopters, they can only fly so high on Everest because the air gets thin. But wouldn't it be so much easier to fly up like 75% of the way through some sort of argument or some sort of challenge or disagreement you have, and then only once you're like super close to the top do you actually get off the helicopter or start walking up by foot? Because like, that's exactly what being compassionate, listening to others, not just freaking instantly rejecting them, will do to you. It'll let you skip this first huge chunk of the journey and take the easy way, where you can just work together and say, okay, sweet, this is the plan, this is the strategy, and we're going to do it together as a team, and I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to care about you, and we're not going to do all this hard stuff down here. We're going to totally forget about that and just focus on this last 20% after I've completely listened to your perspective and I understand exactly what you're saying, and we're on the same page. You want to be on the same page. It's difficult under even the most benign conditions to change people's minds. You've got to get to this point up here where you're on equal footing, where you're together, where you've gone past all the base here. You're at this new level where you're actually able to listen to each other, and the other person will actually care about what you say, because you establish that you care, and you establish authority, and you establish your positioning, and kind of most importantly, like, you want to make sure that they know that you care about them. And the way you do that is by giving them a feeling of significance, by listening to them, listening to their perspective. You guys remember that story I told about that lady who was like flat broke and living on like welfare and Social Security. Like, for the first 75-80% of the conversation, like, I'm not going to focus at all about like, well, why don't you have any investments or whatever, or what happened, or like, all I'm gonna do is sit here and listen, and this is all you want to do is listen. And then you get to this last 20%, and that's when you start talking about the things that you're really interested about. That's when you get to the peak of the summit, and you say, what about your assets, right? Like, what's going on with your investments? And she's like, oh, I don't have any investments. I'm like, okay, that might be the root of the problem, but you can't start out saying, you don't have any investments at the bottom, that's stupid. Like, that, it's just hurting people, they're not gonna listen, they don't care, and they will walk away from you because people don't want to surround themselves with negative people. At least most high performers don't. So surround yourself with positive people, you have to do what? You have to listen for like all of the beginning of the conversation and a vast majority of it. Because the other person just wants what? They want somebody who will listen to them. They want someone they can express themselves to. The moment they do that, like, it changes everything. So huge. And so here's the cool part, right? So now that you know how to make it easier and you know how to like remove all handicaps, you can prove almost anything without letting anybody know it. And you do it, what? You do it subtly, carefully, so that no one will feel that you are doing it. You want to make sure that they feel like they are in control. Do it carefully and you'll succeed. This is expressed really well by Alexander Pope. And I read this and I had this huge epiphany. I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's so cool. No freaking way. And I just really want you guys to understand this concept. Men must be taught as if you taught them not, and things unknown proposed as things forgot. Like, you've got to make people feel like they already know what you're teaching them and that they just forgot. And you have to make them feel like they already know the answers and you're just helping them sort of dust off some dust and uncover it. Even if they've never actually gotten to that point in their lives before. Like, you want to make them feel like they're smart and they're the ones who are learning and they're the ones who know it. I try so hard to do this with like personal finance and investments, right? Like, I don't want to be like, you know, this is how you invest. This is your portfolio. This is how you do diversification. This is how you do technical analysis, blah, 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 blah. Like, my goal, right, is to make it so that people feel like they're discovering it on their own by giving them the tools to go out there and start applying and investing and make some like their first investments, right? And then once you do that, what happens? Once you do that, they start to see the success of the systems and the setups and the technicals, and then they realize on their own terms that this is really what makes it work, which is so huge, so powerful. And it all comes down to this key concept of not forcing things on the others, not saying, you know, you're wrong, but instead very slowly, very carefully, and very genuinely going through a system to help people understand, you know, this is how most successful people invest. And if you can copy what most successful people do, you'll probably be successful yourself. And it's a slower process that way, for sure. I mean, you guys have probably gone through some of the 9 to noon content. You're going to continue to go through it, which is super cool. Like, that's a slower process to help people, help them realize, you know, at the base, it's not like me forcing them into say. It's like at the beginning, it's not like, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, you know, you need to invest, you know, a portion of your income or something into assets and into stocks, and then over time it'll grow and it'll grow and it'll grow. And like that information is there, right? I present that information because you have to present things multiple times. But like, it's not just me like screaming at them saying, you know, save, invest. Because in all reality, if you want to have a lasting impact, I know so many people that love saving, I know so many people that love spending, and they're just different personality types. And you can't like force someone into something. You want to gradually take them through the process. So like, that's exactly like what like I really try super hard to do, is give them these outside resources, these neutral third parties, and help them understand, like, you know, this is the perspective of somebody who was like a millionaire by like their mid-20s, you know, and like, this is what they did, and this is how it worked really well for them. And just slowly bring them through this process of here's how you succeed, very carefully, very slowly, not explicitly telling them, but instead letting them figure it out on their own. If you guys remember from the Think and Grow Rich course, he talks about in the preface and on the back cover and throughout the whole book, this idea of a secret that he has that he wants, you know, if anyone who uncovers this secret, which is what we break down in the course, you know, anyone who uncovers this secret, like, they will have huge levels of success, and everyone who knows it and applies it is like a multi-millionaire, which is super awesome. What he doesn't do is flat out say in the first chapter, you know, this is the secret. Instead, he says inside every chapter are segments of the secret, and, you know, embedded in each chapter is the secret, said in one way or another, but he doesn't explicitly point out what the secret is. Instead, you have to go out there, you have to look for it, to search for it, you have to find it for yourself. And that has such a huge impact, rather than just saying, you know, here's the secret, and then you just have this flat line for the rest of your life. By actually going through the process and maybe not being as confident at the beginning. By actually going through the process and maybe not being as confident at the beginning, and you start out a little bit lower, but you learn and you learn, and then do it on your own and you discover it. You're gonna have so much more impact actually applying it than you would ever have if someone just handed it to you on a silver platter. And it's the same thing with any kind of education. You have so much more success if you actually go through the process of finding a really great place to start, and then taking that education and implementing it to have results and have success. And that's just gonna lead to so much long-term prosperity, which is like super powerful and super awesome. And that's really what he's focusing on here, is that same concept. I mean, over 300 years ago, Galileo said, you cannot teach a man anything You can only help him to find it within himself. I mean, it's the same concept of like teaching a man to fish versus like just, giving him a fish. Like, you've got to help others find the ability, find the secret, find the talent, and get to this breakout point right here where they can actually go out there, apply it, and do it on their own. And that's why, like, I'm not a huge fan of people that are just like, hey, what's your super huge stock tip? What stock should we buy? Or whatever, right? And like, that's why, I don't make most of that stuff public. It's in, except for like really, really high level institutional clients. And instead I just kind of implement it in part of my educational programs, because like, I don't want to just be like, here are the stocks to buy, go invest in these stocks, they're gonna make you tons of money. It's just, it's not as long lasting as quality education. And it doesn't take a lot of effort to educate yourself for literally the rest of your life, which is so powerful, right? Like, if I just give somebody the fish, right? And I say, here are the stocks, go invest in these stocks, and don't understand anything. You don't need to understand how to invest. All you need to do is buy these stocks and you'll become rich, which is not, it's not very great for that long-term impact. You're just giving a temporary solution. It's not gonna actually have a big effect on anybody, right? And sure, it might make me more money to be like, give me 10 grand and I'll give you stocks, it'll change your life. But like, I know that like I can have such a huge impact on someone else, and allow them to have their own independence, their own financial freedom, like if they understand how to actually do it, which I don't know, it's just a huge concept. Another one that you can see here is something Lord Chesterfield said that was fun, which his son, which is like so huge, so powerful. And he said, the one thing I know is that I know nothing. Only one thing he knows is that he knows nothing. Because, at the core, like, people make mistakes. And very often, like, there's maybe like 20% of things that I'm super confident about. Most of those are like stocks and business and building assets. I just like building assets is like, so fun. But like, I know that like I make mistakes, especially in other aspects of my life. Like I'm not always right. Like I got a 57 in math right now, and I'm working to get a lot better at it. Dude, it's tough. It's some tough math. I don't know, man. But like, you got to understand, like, like people are wrong, and I understand, like, everybody is just wrong. And so like, as we move into this chapter in this section, and like looking at how to really win like tons and tons of friends, it's so crucial to understand going into this that like, you can be wrong. And I know if I had some idiot tell me this, 4 years ago, I would have totally ignored them. I'd be like, dude, screw it, I'm the smartest guy ever, whatever. And I remember like, I was starting out high school, and like everyone would always call me a know-it-all, in like all grade levels. I mean, it was like, and it was like derogatory. I mean, it felt bad, but it was like, how can I change this? Excuse me, how can I, make people, not just like despise me? People were just so hard to me. Because what? Because I didn't follow this concept, and I was always trying to correct people. I was trying to always be right and show them why they're wrong. And I would never ever listen to other people if they thought that I was incorrect, which is just very bad. Because like, the whole goal of surrounding yourself with other people is so that they can give you their perspective on what you're doing incorrectly. You guys remember in the seminar that idea of the Tide commercial, right? Like, where they had different perspectives that literally say then tons of money. And it works because you're working with other people, and you know that you're not always right, and that having those other perspectives is going to allow you to significantly increase your hit ratio, right? Like, you can be right so much more if you just allow others to help you, which is huge. So that's the core foundational concept going into this section. And it's so huge, so big. So go out there, guys, apply it, and I will see you in the next module. We're really gonna go into this next deep dive onto this concept and show you exactly how to master it so that you can use sort of this overarching concept to win tons and tons of friends and influence tons of people, which is just so powerful, so huge. And oh man, it's something which I had so long ago. So I hope you guys got a ton of value from this. Go out there, apply it, absolutely crush it, and I will see you in the next module. Thank you guys so much. Bye.